Good evening and welcome to the Township of Woolwich Council meeting on Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. We are now live on YouTube and we welcome all those attending in person and everyone tuning in to the live stream. I'll start with a roll call of council. I'm Mayor Shantz. I'm present and chairing this meeting. Councillor Bryant. Present. Councillor Burgess.
Present.
Councillor Cadeau.
Present.
Councillor Schwint.
Present.
And Councillor Grant is unable to attend and sends her regrets. Before we get started, council needs to reconvene in open session. Do we have a motion to reconvene? Councillor Bryant, seconded by Councillor Cadeau. All those in favor, and that is carried. We have no public meetings, no presentations, no delegations, but we do have some unfinished business. So that first, oh, you're right. I thought I moved in too quickly. I have to turn the page over, sorry. I will start by acknowledging the land on which we live has been here from time immemorial, and that Indigenous people have lived here from time immemorial. And I thank the Chinatan, also called the Attawandaron, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee people who have lived here and cared for this land, and who continue to share and steward this land with us. May we together learn to care for each other, our flora and fauna, and the land that sustains us. December is a month of celebrations for many people and for many reasons. The township is diverse and many of our residents have been preparing for a variety of celebrations: Body Day, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and many other holidays. But December can also be a very difficult month for many. Some are grieving, experiencing hardships, or going through difficult situations. As we finish out 2024 and enter 2025, may we show kindness to everyone we cross paths with this holiday season. And I would add that in the Christian tradition, we say peace on earth and love for neighbor, and I think that applies whether you have a religion that you belong to or not. And I would hope for a year where we can share kindness and goodwill to each other. So please join me in observing a moment of silence. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, there are no items to come forward from closed. A motion that the following minutes be adopted: Council from November 18th, 2024, and Committee of the Whole from December 3rd, 2024. Councillor Cadeau, seconded by Councillor Bryant. All those in favor? And that's carried. We still have no public meetings, no presentations, and no delegations, but we do have unfinished business. The following items were previously discussed but require further consideration by council today. And the first one is the request for tax relief for Elmira Esso. And I will ask Colin Lynn, Director of Finance, to provide a summary of where we left off and what actions are required today.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, and through you to council. You may recall the last time we met, a delegate came from looking for tax relief from the Elmira Esso regarding a regional road construction. We provided council with a little bit more information on the timing of that road construction. A staff policy is not to generally waive taxes for businesses. We levy based on the Income Tax Act. And we apply our taxation across all businesses. So we would not support waiving this, but it is open to council to provide any relief that they may suggest. And the manager of revenue, Teresa Armstrong, is also here to provide to answer any of council's additional questions you may have.
Can I just ask a general, I'm not asking for specifics, but have we had requests for tax relief because of construction before? not from this particular resident, but do we get those requests, and have we had previous requests or discussions about tax relief because of road construction?
I can maybe start. I'll ask Director of Infrastructure Services, Poupé, to maybe comment, because tax relief is a very specific request. We do get compensation relief, and he may be able to answer kind of our usual standard approach related to general relief on construction projects, which might answer your question.
Through your mayor, shouts to members of council. It's generally through a claim process. The township has a claim process that's consistent through all the area municipalities within the region of Waterloo. That if anybody feels that there's negligence on behalf of municipality for whatever reason, they can submit a claim for that request. It is not uncommon, I would say, through reconstruction projects. Certainly with business properties who will suggest that we've impacted their profit margins and affected traveling public from accessing there, and then they tend to find that their business declines in some form or fashion, and it is dealt with the exact same way as that claim process. I'm not aware that the township has ever paid out based on lost profits or anything to that effect. But certainly every reconstruction project has its fair share of claims that are submitted, but not aware that we've ever done that. And certainly in recent memory, with Industrial Drive being one of the more challenging ones, we typically make every concession to provide access to businesses, signage, and the like. They are disruptive. We appreciate that, but it is always a challenge. What came first, the road or the business? And it is unfortunate when we do need to do invasive reconstruction projects, but they are very short term in the grand scheme of the life cycle of the assets that we are replacing. So typically looking on a 50 to 75-year life cycle. So that's I hope that's some helpful context, but yeah, we've not been involved in any payouts.
And this particular project was a regional project?
That is correct. That was managed by the Region of Waterloo.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to staff. Based on the delegation that came forward yesterday, I'm still a little unclear as to what the actual request is in dollar figures. Has that ever come forward to staff's knowledge? Because I'm not aware that that dollar figure came forward to council. I know that the delegation has suggested tax relief, but what is the actual dollar figure request? Do we have that information?
Through your mayor shots, no, they've never specified a specific period, a dollar amount. It was just looking for help.
Thank you. Councillor Bryant.
I would like to suggest that maybe we ask the Esso people to work with staff and come to some sort of a payment plan option. If there's something they can do by working with staff, I think that would be their best option going forward.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Cadeau.
I know that this council questioned, how much of those fees, late fees, penalties, or whatever they may be attributed to the township portion. And I know that it's still a little unclear because it's calculated based on the overall tax rate. If we could ballpark, even if it was for, say, 1 year's time, what would we be looking at in terms of a refund if we were to look at something like that? And I know that it's hard to kind of ballpark, but would you, and sorry if that request is a little all over the place, Teresa. Hopefully you can speak to it a little bit. I'm just trying to delineate what the township would have actually charged these residents in late penalties as a result of this.
If I can just add, we're dealing with an individual property owner's kind of particulars of taxation. And I don't know if the delegate is here or on the line, just to ask them if they would feel comfortable even discussing kind of their payment pieces before we disclose that.
Is the delegate on the line?
Yes, we have Ms. Naharaja available by Zoom while they don't have speaking rights, if council were to ask them a question, I believe they are available to and willing to answer questions.
Councillor Schwint.
I guess I'm wondering, would it be fair to ask the delegate if they want to move forward with this, to work with staff to articulate and bring to council exactly what the request is and how what the methodology was in calculating the ask. To me, that's more appropriate forum than in council.
Ms. Nataraja, are you willing to speak to us?
Yes, I can. I came to a calculation how many days that business was impacted when we had the road closure. It was 333 days within year 22 and 23, and one day it's about $40 property tax were charged. So, and the penalty I owe is 11,682. So I came to a calculation for the construction cost is $13,613 if you paying for $40 for 333 days.
So did you go to the region for relief and for business continuity during construction, since it was a regional project?
Well, they paid some money for the expropriation of land and some injury to the business. They didn't anything. They didn't pay anything for the property tax, and it is a business here, and I make money here in order to pay all the bill. I didn't make any money that time, so I won't be able to pay any bills. So that's what I'm came to ask the council for help.
So but they paid you for loss of business.
Not lost of business. It's for the land they took in the front of the property, and yeah.
Okay. Eric, did you have something specific for the delegate?
I guess follow up to your question, Mayor Shantz, they paid for the land, they expropriated. Was there other amounts paid as well? And what was that to cover? I'm unclear on that.
Yes, they haven't paid me anything for tax relief or anything like that. I'm paying the township for the tax, right? So this is where I need help. So they are not gonna be concerned about my property tax. They only money they paid me for the expropriation land and some money for the injury of business. That's it. And most of it I paid. They denied my claim. I have to hire another lawyer, and like most of it went to the lawyer's fee and the accounting firm, and yeah. So
the injurious business piece, I think, is loss of business.
When was that paid?
this year,
In 2024?
yeah.
Okay. Councillor Cadeau.
This question is for staff, and it's more a process question for tax collection mainly. The township would collect the taxes, and then we would make a payment to region on behalf of the ratepayer. Is that correct?
Ms. Armstrong?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz. Yes, so we are required to pay the region in April monthly. So if we don't collect everybody's taxes, we still have to pay the region, and the same with the school board. And we pay them 4 times a year.
So we would have already paid these late fees on behalf of the resident to the region then, correct?
Yeah,
We would-
so her portion of the taxes would have been already paid to the region and the school boards, because we would have had to pay that in the current year.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify to Councillor Cadeau, the region aren't, because we're essentially paying the region those taxes. The region aren't charging them necessarily. We're essentially floating the taxes on behalf of this taxpayer. So these penalties and interest are our penalties and interest because we have to pay the region. So the region aren't getting the penalties and interest.
The region and the school board always get paid on time. Council, is there, do you have any, only if you want to do anything?
I would like to make a motion that this individual work with the tax department and come to some sort of a payment option and work it out with them basis, because we're just going to be going back and forth trying to get more numbers and figure this out. I think she'll get the results she wants through the tax department. So I would like to make a motion that she work with the tax department to resolve this through a payment plan. Sorry, excuse me, my voice is fading out here.
We can ask her to work on a payment plan, but the
Yeah.
tax department doesn't have the authority to waive anything.
Right,
So,
right,
okay.
it's to work
So
out a
you're
payment
just
plan.
talking about a payment plan?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Cadeau, is there further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that is, are you abstaining? Are you in favor or in favor? Okay, so that is carried. So, Ms. Nataraja, we're asking you to work with our tax department on a payment plan. But that doesn't, at this point, include any waiving of fees. So, if you would contact Ms. Armstrong in our revenue department, she can work with you on that. Okay. Moving on to the next item is a property tax exemption for affordable housing, and I'll ask Mr. Lynn again to provide a summary of where we left off and what we need to do today.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, and again through you to council. This is another tax matter that was deferred from our last council meeting. It was related this time to a staff report to provide property tax exemption for this specific roll number. This is for a, I may ask Teresa to jump in on the exact name, but I believe it's at Elmira Seniors. It's a seniors facility for low-income seniors for affordable housing. This was an application from the region on this, and we've decided not to take a policy-driven approach. That is, we're evaluating each tax application on its individual merits, so that's why we're here. Staff do recommend waiving these property taxes for this particular roll number, but not committing to any future tax exemptions as a result of this approval, and it was deferred from the last meeting.
Okay. Council, I think there is a recommendation in your package. Is there discussion or?
I'll move
mover?
the recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Cadeau, seconded. Nobody wants to second it? Okay, thank you. I can, I think I can add by way of, the region is putting a policy in place for affordable housing, and this is only for, and this recommendation is, sort of in line with that. It's the only property in the township that fits the criteria that the region is using for their tax exemptions. So if that's helpful to anyone. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Cadeau?
So just to be clear, we're not the only ones involved in this partnership. The region has already waived the taxes on this. They're looking for us to do the same. The school board has also waived the taxes on this, I'm understanding. So we would be the only ones not to if we so chose not to. More a comment for council to consider.
Councillor Schwint?
Yeah, I've been struggling with this for the last 2 weeks, and at this point, I don't think I can support the recommendation. Looking at the property in question, we want to promote new affordable housing. I think for the last long period of time, this property has provided affordable housing for the community, and it's worked well. Same time, we've got to meet our budget demands as well. And I just don't think I can see waiving 100% of the taxes for this. It's not a new additional capacity, and I think we'll have to carry on the way we are. To be my vote.
Okay. I mean, we don't have a motion on the floor because, oh, you did second it. Yes, you did second it. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question then. Those in favor? Opposed? That's defeated. Okay. We have quite a lengthy consent agenda. Does anyone want to pull anything? Councillor Schwint?
Can we pull the Three Bridges Road
Yep,
item, please?
just looking for it.
I
but
forget
Yes,
which
we
one it
can.
is. Thank you.
Anything else? Three Bridges Road, I think, was yours, Mr. Poupey.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson, through you to members of council. So it is a consent item. It is a change in posted speed limit that staff are proposing. Currently, the road is an 80-kilometer-an-hour zone with two school zones within it, and a warning speed of 50 kilometers an hour in between the school zones. Again, looking at this road, the geometry of the road with the school zones, with the horizontal curve in there, and the short stretches for which to get 80 kilometers an hour, couple that with the agricultural use on the side, horse and buggy community, and it is certainly a shortcut for construction equipment such as tandem or triaxle trucks and concrete trucks there too, with a lot of old order children walking on the side of the road to go to the parochial school and the like. It seems inappropriate to continue on with the 80-kilometer-an-hour and the 60-kilometer-an-hour school zone. I think this starts to come on the heels of staff being at the traffic coordinators for the region. Council's reminded that the region of Waterloo was here in October speaking about the automated speed enforcement, and there is a move afoot to look at 40-kilometer-an-hour school zones. Appreciate that not everybody sees that as necessarily the answer. However, I think the important piece from a safety perspective, it is exponential chance of survival when looking at the impacts of a motor vehicle traveling at 60 kilometers an hour versus 15 kilometers an hour, or 50 kilometers an hour, sorry, versus 40 kilometers an hour. I think that's where you see the biggest survival rate. A pedestrian would have about a 15% chance of survival being hit by a vehicle traveling about 50 kilometers an hour, and that jumps up to 70% survival of a vehicle traveling 40. So in all, we think it does fit. It is in line with pedestrian safety and all of the roadside environment and the use of this particular road. And shoulders are quite narrow out there. I do traverse this. I do see that. So it is challenging. So for all those reasons is why it is here and why we're recommending the reduction speed from 80 to 60, and then in the school zones from the current 60 to 40.
Councillor Schwint, did you have something specific you wanted to address on that one?
Yeah, I guess I'm really struggling with this, movement, as Director Poupey mentioned, to move from 80 to 40 kilometer hours school zones. I know it's coming from the cities, and understand that safety is important to everybody. We understand that, but I'm not sure that these reductions in speeds, especially in a rural setting, are actually achieving the goal we're after. Intuitively, it makes sense, oh, we'll go slower, but does that take into account driver behavior? And I believe that really society's got to decide what the appropriate speed is, and arbitrarily reducing to 40 kilometers an hour on a rural road, other than appearing to be a cash cow for the region with the camera, are we making effective change for the better? When I drive on that road, I don't believe the 40 kilometer an hour zone is appropriate. When I first heard this, I was reluctant to support any change. I could see the argument for making that entire stretch a 60 kilometer an hour zone. It's not my first choice, but I could understand the rationale there. The 40 kilometer just doesn't make sense to me in a rural setting, and it doesn't make sense to me on other regional roads in the township. I believe it's not going to create a safer environment or just make us feel better, and that's not a good enough reason for change.
Councillor Cadeau and then Burgess.
I tend to agree with Councillor Schwint, specifically the comment about the automated enforcement cameras that's right there. It's a relatively new camera that's gone in there, and we're proposing dropping a speed limit from 60 to 40 right where that camera is. That could definitely capture more people that are used to traveling a little bit faster there. So that's a concern. I also think this is going to create a speeding problem because we're lowering the speed limit. People are naturally going to drive a little bit faster because they're used to it, which could lead to complaints from residents that people are speeding, which they would be accurate. They are speeding because they're going a rate that they're used to. So there's a few concerns with that. I appreciate Councillor Schwint in your suggestion, maybe keep it consistent throughout the whole road. I guess my concern is that there are 2 school zones in there, and people generally, I'm saying generally, not myself, of course, but may travel a little bit faster than the posted limit from time to time. If it's 60 throughout that whole stretch, they may just forget about those school zones, travel a little bit faster through those. So I kind of like the intentional drop in the speed limit. I don't like the drop of 20 in both of the, like throughout the whole stretch though. I think that that's too far of a drop. I may be willing to support like a 70-50, dropping it 10 kilometers in both zones. It delineates the school zone from the non-school zones and would naturally lead to that slowing down. I don't think I can support a 60-40 though. I would be more likely to leave it as is than go down to 60-40.
Councillor Burgess.
Through you, Mayor Shantz. Was this requested by any of the residents or schools, or is this a kind of staff initiation, or what are issues?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Burgess. This is definitely a staff initiative. Staff looked at a lot of the rural roads. As council is aware, the Highway Traffic Act stipulates that if there is not a posted speed in urban setting, that automatically designates it 50 kilometer an hour zone. And in a rural setting, if there is no posted speed, it's 80 kilometers an hour. Just from a risk management perspective, it was important for staff to review rural roads from this perspective. And we had a number of roads that were inappropriately not signed. The stretch of Three Bridges Road between Henry Street, which is south of this, to Hawksville Road, is a 50 kilometer hour zone on a gravel stretch of road with a number of windy bends and vertical curves on it. And that was, again, a staff initiative that was not implemented by any resident complaint. So it was really a risk management perspective, and that's exactly what staff feel is why this is on the docket today from a risk perspective.
Councillor Burgess.
And taking the opposite approach of Councillor Schwint there, if we kept it at 80 but lowered the schools to 40, is that too big of a drop then? Like, is that not even possible kind of thing?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Burgess, that would be too big of a drop. There would need to be a reduction zone in there of 20 kilometers. Typically, you go from 80 to 60 to 40, then back 60 to 80. The problem with this stretch of road is there is not enough space to do that. You would need anywhere between 500 to 1,000 meters to make those changes. So there is not, the road doesn't afford that given the challenges on the geometry of the road.
And the last question, you talked about the heavy trucks going down there. There's no way to, given the location of that, to put like no trucks or something along those lines to try and reroute them or something like that to avoid that issue, which is one of the reasons we want to switch the speed limit.
Again, through you, Mayor Shantz, it's always a possibility, I guess, to explore the idea of limiting trucks on various routes. what would happen right now and is they would need to continue on Hawksville Road until they hit Sawmill Road and go through St. Jacobs, but potentially come back in. I think that's what happens is depending on the direction that they're going, certainly if they're going Floridale way, this makes logical sense to come up Three Bridges Road, but that certainly is always a possibility. There's nothing to say you can't put a truck prohibition on any road in the township. But again, we appreciate everything boils down to enforcement at the end of the day, right? It's engineering, education, and enforcement as far as the three E's in the traffic world go. So all of those in combination help alter driver behavior, which is what we're all trying to do. It'd be nice if everybody just followed the letter of the law, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
Councillor Schwinn.
Yeah, it would be great if we all follow the letter of the law, but there'd be a lot of pressure on us as council to make sure the letter was right in the law. And we don't always get that one perfect. I am going to change gears a little bit. There is a big push, I believe, in the region for 40-kilometer school zones in general. Emphasis on child safety, etc. Has there been work done to identify what the causes of, I guess, accidents or incidents are and what the appropriate measures are to reduce them? Is speeding always the number one cause, or is congestion, double parking, poor parking contributing factors or even greater factors? I know there's an article in the Record, maybe it was last week, looking at the causes, and definitely speeding didn't seem to be the major one.
Through Mayor Schatz to Councillor Schwint, difficult. I'm not going to profess to be an expert in traffic. I know we do get data from WRPS regarding in the rural areas, speeding is the highest concern in the rurals, more so than the cities. Distracted driving is the other big one. I think there is apathy in general with driving now. So there's a lot at play, but distracted driving and speeding are absolutely the number one cause. I mean, as far as I've been at the table with the traffic coordinators group, WRPS does attend that. And it's fascinating to hear that they could stay in a school zone all day long and just ticket. Like it's unfortunate. It really is, right? I mean, ideally, these ASCs don't make any money at all because everybody's following along and they're in the right place doing the right thing. Because if we're trying to really protect children from fatalities, the data says 40 kilometers an hour, the chance of survival is dramatically, exponentially higher. I can say that there was a move afoot to modify the Highway Traffic Act to make 40 kilometers the posted speed if there were no signs. For whatever reason, the province has not changed that, even though the data suggests it should be lower than 50. 50, you have a 15% survival rate. So there was a push for that. I think that's sort of subsided, but that is with the province, and they did not alter the Highway Traffic Act. That's as much information, I guess, as we could provide confidently.
If I can just add my 2 cents here, because we did talk about this at the region, and I did have some concerns on our rural roads with some of their suggestions. But the one thing I do agree with is lowering it in the school zone as opposed to keeping it the same speed all the way through, because I think the main thing that does is says to a driver, something's different, I have to pay attention. And there will always be people who don't pay attention. We wish there weren't. And, you know, if I can put a message out there to people, pay attention. But yeah, I think it is important just for that to identify that you got to pay attention here. Don't be daydreaming.
So is 80-60 something council is more supportive of than 60-40?
Like 70-50. I think that staff are on to something. That 80, you know, there's really short stretches in there. To even get up to 80 is a bit of a challenge. I think that they make a compelling case that we should look at reducing speeds there. I think that reducing it to 60-40 is way too low. So I would motion that we modify it to 70-50.
Councillor Bryant and then Councillor Burgess.
Thank you. Through you to Jared. Do we have children walking to school in that area at all?
Through you, Mayor Schatz to Councillor Bryant, yes. Daily,
That's a big concern right there.
Yeah.
with narrow shoulders, yeah.
Councillor Burgess.
I was just gonna second his motion, 70/50.
Okay. Is there further discussion? Mr. Poupet, do you have any comments on 70/50?
Through Mayor Shantz to council, staff professionally recommend 60/40. It is up to council how they want to deal with this, but if it's 70/50, we can make the change. But again, the statistics say that the chance of survival at 50 kilometers is 15%. We've moved the needle by 10% versus 55% potentially with a 40, and hence why the 60/40. We think it's appropriate for the road, but again, it is council's decision.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Cadeau.
Should we be aware of any liability concerns? I know we are still reducing it, so presumably increasing safety. Taking staff's recommendation, going down to 60/40, are we opening ourselves up to any liability concerns?
Through Mayor Shantz to Councillor Cadeau, I think municipalities are always exposed to liability, right? I mean, that is why staff recommend a lot of times what they do to manage risk as best as possible. We think it's a better strategy to follow with a 60/40, but it again is council's decision.
Councillor Burgess.
Just trying to make a compromise here. How about 70/40, or is that too big of a gap again?
Typically, it's a 20-kilometer-hour buffer. Mhm.
Okay, I think there's a motion on the floor for 70/50. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. So we still have, we have to do the rest of the consent agenda then. Would someone like to move the rest of the consent agenda? Councillor Bryan, Councillor Burgess, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we are on to staff reports, and our first one is municipal digital sign advertising policy. And we have Executive Officer Rayanne Bauman. Welcome, Rayanne, you're up.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. If you haven't already seen the big, beautiful sign that's been installed near the corner of Arthur Street South and Southfield Drive, don't worry, you can't miss it. With the installation of this sign, it has given the township an exceptional opportunity for community messaging. Messaging that is not only from the township, but from our profits as well. And I know that our businesses and not-for-profit organizations are very excited about this sign as we started receiving calls the day it was installed onto how they could advertise. This proposed policy defines the expectations regarding the appropriate use of the municipal digital sign as messages conveyed to the public by the township act as a representation of the municipality. This ensures that the sign is operated in a manner that represents Woolwich in a positive nature. Further, the intent of the proposed fees is twofold. One, to not only generate revenue, but two, to minimize expenses incurred on the ratepayers for future repair or replacement of the asset. I would like to end with noting that the adoption of a policy relative to the use of the sign, as we are providing residents and visitors with a visual, innovative, and customer service opportunity that furthers our commitment to increasing communication to our community. And I would be happy to answer any questions that council has.
Any questions, Councillor Burgess?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, just one question. I read the rules and regulations there, but if anyone who follows that, are they able to advertise, like there's not gonna be, we've hit a max or something like that? We can keep rotating the advertisements and that. The reason I ask is just, I know along Industrial Drive, you've had issues there with some were allowed to put signs, some weren't due to whether it's a nonprofit or not. So I just want to make sure this is gonna be open to everyone.
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Burgess, this would be open to everyone. You are speaking to the Industrial Boulevard section that is regulated within the sign bylaw. That is completely separate from this policy. So this would allow any organization, business that is local Woolwich Township to advertise on it. We are limiting it to 60 advertisers per cycle just because of the capacity of the sign. If we get to that point, I am going to be very happy, and then potentially come back to you to maybe amend this policy, but that would be the only limitation on it, would be if we actually hit that 60 advertisers.
Okay, anyone else? Councillor Schwint.
Looking at the rates, is the thought behind the rates of not-for-profits to cover our operating costs? Is that kind of how the level is established, or what's the thought process on who are giving reduced or in one case free advertising to?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Schwint. So this is staying in consistency with a lot of the other municipalities that have a similar policy in place. It's also taking into consideration some of our not-for-profits that do a lot of work within the municipality on limited budgets, which is why we're also giving a reduced rate to them. There is one organization that is identified within it as we wouldn't be charging them, which is the Maple Syrup Festival. And that is historically because they have advertised on the sign at that location for as long as I can remember. But this way, the reduced rate for the not-for-profits gives us an opportunity to kind of help them, because they are a big part of our communities and do a lot for our communities as well.
Anyone else? Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Cadeau, seconded by Councillor Burgess. All those in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Ryan. Next is the award for financial software, and Mr. Lynn, this is your report.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, and through you to council. So the title of this report is Award for Financial Software, but I just want to be clear that this is not approving the budget related to the financial software or the staff associated with the implementation. As we're so close to budget, within the next week or so, we will hopefully have the 2025 draft budget released. So these costs will be included into the budget. But we are asking council to award the purchase and to the vendor, MNP Digital, and did want to provide council with an update of the process. So during the evaluation process, we did go through a number of different vendors. We went through the RFP process, and during the process, one of our preferred options essentially said that they're changing the form that they're using for financial software, which kind of threw a wrench in some of our plans. So we looked again at their new solution and the existing pieces, and we chose to award based on our criteria with M&P Digital. So the budget for this, again, just for a reminder for council, the budget was included modernization funding. And this process was entered into almost a year ago for modernization funding and water wastewater reserve funding to the tune of about $200,000. This amount comes in just over that entire budget amount, but also wanted to highlight for council that we wouldn't have the staff capacity to implement such a large scale project of this nature. It's a 2-year implementation piece, so it would take quite a while. And it would also look at our entirety of different processes, which is why I'm recommending kind of a business analyst to look at our existing processes to find efficiencies in the way we're doing things, kind of look at all of our different processes, change our entire chart of accounts, kind of set us up kind of for the future. So there's 2 contract staff included as well in this proposal. Again, we're not asking for council to approve the costs related to it, just to award the contract to the preferred vendor. And then we will be taking the actual budget to council for deliberation in January for actual approval.
So I'm not quite clear now again. I thought I was. So we're actually awarding the contract without any dollars.
Yes, through you, Mayor Shantz, this is a bit unusual. So initially we were just suggesting to, so normally this would go a few months before, and we would ask for pre-budget approval. As we're so close to budget, We don't want to ask for pre-budget approval, want council to consider this project in the context of the entire budget. But Deputy Director Petherick suggested that we should be still awarding the contract to MMP to indicate that they are the successful proponent as part of the evaluation process, to kind of finish off that evaluation process, but then we can't engage them without kind of budget. But that was his recommendation, and unfortunately, he's not here to answer any questions regarding that piece. But we just wanted to, again, make sure that council was aware of the kind of process and to ask any questions related to this.
So the vendor would understand that the award is predicated on budget approval.
That was to engage the vendor to talk about timelines, and right now we can't really do that because we're still in the RFP process. We would obviously say that we're subject to budget approval, and then discuss kind of timelines or implementation, or we wouldn't enter into
other
a contract
details.
with them, essentially.
Okay. Councillor Cadeau and then Councillor Bryant.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to Colm, are you aware of any penalties that we would incur if we were to award this and then make a change of mind and not move forward?
Through you, Mayor Shantz. No, I'm not aware of anything. We're not actually going to, again, to be clear, this will not authorize us to sign any contract, any binding contract. It really just allows us the authorization to enter into discussions with them specifically, rather than all of the proponents in there, because right now we have to ask the same questions to all the same vendors. Now we're essentially singling out a specific vendor that we can engage kind of future discussions with, but we would not award the contract, and we would come to council pending budget approval for the actual award of the contract, and also confirmation of all the costs involved.
Thank you, Councillor Bryant.
He just answered my question. Thank you.
Councillor Schwint.
A couple questions. Is this a same software that other area municipalities are using?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Schwint. I'm aware of 2 different municipalities that are using this software. I can't remember off the top of my head. They are fairly new in the space. The other vendor that we mentioned, the Central Square solution, were much more popular among municipalities. But again, they're changing their kind of platform, their entire solution. So it's conceivable that a lot of municipalities may need to exit their current software provider and go to a different solution, because Microsoft are no longer supporting that platform. I don't know all the technical details, but no longer supporting that platform past 2029, I believe.
And follow up the 222,000 implementation annual licensing year 1. What is the annual licensing fee year 2 forward?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, Councillor Schwint. I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $80,000 a year, and we're currently paying somewhere in the neighborhood of 40,000. So there's a net increase of 40,000. We wouldn't be paying. We would have to confirm again with the vendor, and taking this with the tender award, we wouldn't pay the license fees until successful implementation for it. So it wouldn't be a 2025 license issue or 2026. Be paying it in 2027, provided that we had it fully up and running then.
Councillor Burgess.
Through you, Mayor Shantz. Just reading how you went through this process, you kind of chose the top 3, and then basically 2 of those we found out were end of life. So then it kind of defaulted to the NMP digital. Is it a fair comparison, or should we be pulling 2 more to do a closer look? Or I guess also on that question, is there anything this platform isn't able to do that we're missing?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Burgess. It's good software. It's modern software. I'm really excited about the end user solution, which is kind of the utility and tax billing portal that most of our customers will receive. It'll look a lot more modern. There'll be a lot more self-service tools that they can go in and kind of access their accounts and do things that they're not currently able to do. So and there was only really 2 that were, or 3 that were close. The other 2 we wouldn't really entertain And we did cast a wide net. They didn't meet our needs and our criteria that we had set out in the RFP. So there was those two successful vendors essentially met our criteria. Just to be clear, they definitely both met the criteria. But now with that uncertainty and they don't really have a long-term solution, the MMP was the preferred choice.
Councillor Schwinn.
This is the biggie, so I guess I'm going to ask some more questions. I'm curious, Kitchener, Guelph, Cambridge, Waterloo, what platforms do they use?
Through your Mayor Shantz to Councillor Schwinn, I don't know the exact platforms that I don't know all of the platforms. I could get that information for you. I do know that Guelph uses JD Edwards as a kind of system of record. They also have budgeting software. So this again is for accounting software, not budgeting software of FMW Web. I believe Kitchener uses SAP, which is a large enterprise software solution, and also budgeting software. Just for scale, I've been involved in some SAP implementation, and it's over $1 million. It's a multi-million-dollar ERP large enterprise solution, which they wouldn't even bid on our municipality. PeopleSoft or JD Edwards probably wouldn't be sufficient for the size of our operation either.
Councillor Burgess.
For you, Mayor Shantz, just talking about the other municipalities, because we share tax bills and water bills and all that with the region, is there any opportunity to use similar platforms or to do the tender through them or whatever as a joint for cost savings?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, Councillor Burgess, I don't believe so. And the reason I say that, they probably already have a software solution, so they would have to be looking to upgrade their software solution. If there was another township or another similar sized municipality that was doing the same type of changes at the same time, I could see that being a preferred option. But saying the region of Waterloo, again, the size of this, a couple $100,000, they would be looking at a multi-million-dollar solution just because of the number of residents, probably over 500,000 residents. So we could look into it definitely, but probably wouldn't line up the same.
I don't see any more questions. Does someone want to move the recommendation? Councillor Cadeau, seconder. Councillor Burgess, further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Still thinking about it? Do you need an answer tonight, Mr. Lynn?
Through you, Mayor Shantz. So we can't really engage the vendor with any kind of planning or anything until we haven't kind of closed off this RFP. So right now we're still in kind of a limbo with the RFP process, still kind of, I suppose, in an evaluation phase and don't have the completed evaluation.
Councillor Cadeau.
Would approval of this tonight put us in a better position at budget time to make an informed decision around implementation?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, I do believe it would. We could get a lot more detail with specifics and timing and resource requirements. Right now, if we wanted to ask specific questions, we would, again, in transparency, have to ask all the vendors for all of those questions for everything, and then present all of that information again to council as part of the award.
And our next meeting date is our first budget meeting on January 7th. So you're saying that would allow you to come to that meeting or whenever this comes up with better information? I think is what I just heard, Councillor Schwinn.
I understand you had the managers to go through the screening process. When they brought you the recommendation and you went through it, are you, I guess, excited and confident in this? Or would you be in the back of your mind thinking we should cast a wider net?
Through you, Mayor Shantz. I am definitely excited about this software. I am also understanding kind of the limitations of this software. It's not going to do everything that we think it's going to do, or we would like it to do. It's not budgeting software. So it is really kind of that back end solution. It would allow us to run financial statements. It will increase the customer service portal, help us with tax billing and all of those kind of efficiencies. It's not budgeting software, so it doesn't allow a lot of forecasting and scenarios and those kind of things, but you can't add in modern budgeting software onto our current solution. So you need this in place to even consider budgeting software. It does have a budget module, which will allow us to put in and get better reporting for council, but it won't really help long-term forecasting because it's not budgeting kind of scenario tools. And there is nothing on the market that I'm aware of that does everything. It's either one or the other, but it will provide modernization and a platform that we can build on.
But did I hear you say that there is possibility to add on another software that would be compatible with this to do that budgeting piece somewhere down the road if we so desired?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, that's correct. Essentially, you need kind of this kind of source system for all your financial information, and any new modern software can interface through any new software. So our current software, you couldn't do that because it's more of a dated kind of system. We couldn't just layer on budgeting software into an old platform, but if we update our base platform, it'll make a number of improvements, and then we can always add all the modern budgeting software on top of that. And it would likely be a lot less time intensive, and a lot of the work that we're doing for this work will save us down the road for any budgeting implementation. It'll be much quicker and cheaper.
Thank you. Well, I did call the question, but a couple of people didn't want to vote yet. Are you guys ready to vote or yes? Okay, I'll call the question again. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, and the next report is yours too, Mr. Lynn. Fees and charges.
Again, through you, Mayor Shantz, presenting the fees and charges staff report. This traditionally goes ahead of budget to allow council an opportunity to discuss any particular fees and charges. Overall, we're increasing our fees and charges by roughly 3%, but there are individual changes, and the individual directors can speak to some of those other changes based on their own analysis and assessment. Fees and charges allow us to keep tax rates lower by charging users of a service a fee directly related to that service. So it lessens essentially the burden on the tax rate and helps with kind of cost recovery. So it's an important financing tool for our operating budget. But with that, I'll just open it up to the floor for any questions.
Questions? Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Regarding these settlement areas, I know we're not allowing stag and does and anything relating to alcohol in these facilities. Are we losing money on the facilities in like Maryhill, Bloomingdale, Conestoga, Breslau? Are they covering their costs, or are they costing us money every year to keep them open?
Can you answer that, or do you want Marie
Or
to?
whoever?
Yeah.
I was going to defer to Marie, the
Yeah.
representative for Recreation and Community Services.
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Bryant. There's always cost that comes with maintenance and utility. With steak and does and alcohol events specifically, the cost that we charge for a rental does not cover the staffing and security costs for it. So to answer your question, buildings always have expenses to it, but alcohol events will not provide that financial assistance to cover costs in general.
Right, but further to that, are these facilities generating enough revenue through their other activities to cover their costs, or are they generally costing us more than they're bringing in?
programs and rentals that we do have coming through covers our costs.
Okay, so we're not basically paying more than we're getting back in return.
Not regarding programs and rentals.
Okay, I just want to make sure that these facilities aren't costing us money versus being revenue neutral, I guess.
I do have Director Ann MacArthur on as well if she wants to add anything too.
Ms. MacArthur, I saw you, I saw your Hollywood Square. Go ahead.
Council, Mayor and Council, just to add to that, Maria is correct in that we are recovering costs for programs and rentals and making generating revenue on rentals. There are static, as she noted, static costs with the building. And I would say that those costs are, I wouldn't say completely neutral, but they are improving, you know, over the last 5 years. And Marie and Recreation Program staff are working really hard to increase program offerings, to market those facilities to different groups, whether they're nonprofit or for-profit, to expand their businesses. So I think we are continuing to trend in the right direction, to have less of a cost on the taxpayer, if that helps.
Okay, thank you. Did someone else have a hand up? Councillor Schwint.
Just looking at the recreation charges and fees. Do we have agreements with our local, I guess, ICE users for rates for 2025, or is that a annual negotiation?
Right.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Schwint. So council approved on a term of our percentage increase for ICE rentals until 2027. So this, when the fees were approved, this was provided in part of their lease agreement and rental agreement yearly.
Councillor Cadeau.
Just to follow up to that question, are we breaking even with our ICE rentals? And looking forward in a couple of years when we don't have that agreement of, I think it's around 2% increases, what would we be looking at a potential increase? I would hate to shock our local service clubs and having to kind of raise it by 6 or 7% if they've been used to a 2% increase.
So I have a way of looking at it, and I'm going to ask you what you mean by breaking even, because in my mind, I look at it as a full ICE rental, and then we subsidize our youth. So are you asking, are we losing on the youth subsidy part, or are we losing on the main rental amounts? Do you follow what I'm saying?
Not as well as I would like to.
Okay. Councillor.
If I could, I think I'd follow up on that. Are we increasing the percentage subsidy on our youth rates over the period of time?
You're looking puzzled too. It's kind of convoluted, isn't it?
Like-
But if we rented all of our ICE at full rate, would we break even? Annie, Ms. MacArthur.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, to Council. I don't think, again, similar to the settled community centers, that any facility for ICE or aquatics would ever break even based on ICE user rates. What I would say is that with the previous council agreeing to a lower ICE rate use rate for 4 years, we are starting to lag behind. Normally, we would recommend an increase each year, consistent with expenses and looking at market comparators and see what the community is willing to pay. So I think based on the 4-year agreement, you know, it's been less than 2%. So we are lagging, and we may have to make some strides in the coming years coming out of that. I think that most of the municipalities probably surrounding us are looking at increases, you know, over 5% and upwards of 8%.
Thank you. Other questions on the fees and charges? No. Does someone want to move the recommendation? Councillor Schwint. Second by Councillor Burgess. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Award of contract East Side Lands Geotechnical Investigation, Mr. Tucker.
Good evening, Mayor Shantz, Woolwich Council. Earlier, sorry. All right, excuse me. Earlier this year, Council endorsed the preferred alternative for the township's East Side Land Servicing Environmental Assessment, which supports growth in the township's East Side lands or the Braslot area. The next steps ahead of proceeding for detailed design for that preferred alternative is to undertake a geotechnical investigation. And that geotechnical investigation will provide more detail for the eventual chosen consultant who will undertake the detailed design. So identifying soil stratigraphy in the area as well as groundwater levels, which will again lead into that detailed design piece for the servicing, which is again the main trunk sewer. So staff are seeking council's authorization to award the East Side Lands Geotechnical Investigation assignment to MTE Consultants, Inc. at a cost of $254,354.21 after HST rebate. This project was approved in the 2024 capital budget and is funded by development charges as well as the regional airport. So with that, I will take any questions that council may have.
Questions? Mover and seconder. Councillor Cadeau, Councillor Burgess, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. You got off easy tonight. Yeah. Okay, mayor's report on regional matters. We've been doing a lot of budget work and we are still not done. Last week we started at 9 in the morning and I got home after midnight, and so we're gonna finish it on Friday, I hope. Yeah. Other than that, is there anything specific that, no, okay, you're getting those reports. Council, are there any council reports? I was talking to someone that I thought wanted to highlight something. No? Yeah. No. Okay.
I will talk about the Elmira bypass briefly. If you're giving me the opportunity, I will just say how passionate I am about getting a bypass for Elmira. I don't want to take much of council's time, but hey, if you're giving me the floor to talk about Elmira's bypass, I will gladly take it.
Okay. We did have a session on the bypass in the first step, so yeah, thank you. Anything else? Seeing nothing, outstanding activity list. Councillor Schwint.
Yeah, this one's brought to my attention now, the taxation of older Mennonite churches. I know it's been deferred, and we can't do anything because of whatever reason. But I do find it strange that we could have a motion to, or recommendation to waive taxes on one individual parcel here in town for low income housing, but we can't figure out how to make a bylaw for these churches over 7 years. I just don't think that's, I think we could do better as a township. And I'd really recommend that through the budgeting process, we find a way to allocate some dollars to that. I think we've all agreed on the aims.
Mr. Brownman, do you want to give us a history on that one?
Yeah, I'll start, but Deanne can tag team with me. So I think what we have to appreciate is that it's not something that relates to the budget. It's related to the fact that in our two-tier system, under the regional official plan, they needed to make appropriate changes to allow for these properties to exist and for them to have something other than the commercial assessment, which has been really taxing, pardon the pun, on the churches. Absolutely, it's taken without a doubt longer than expected. That's a big part of that, and I think Deanne can confirm this, has to do with the fact that the region had planned at one point to do that in phase 1 of the ROP, which was completed, but then it was moved to phase 2. But now phase 2 isn't happening because we're taking on regional planning responsibilities. But I think this is where I would end. I think she can speak to the fact that this issue at long last, hopefully will finally be addressed in the update to our official plan. Deanne.
And if I can ask if you can clarify too, is the January 1st change in the planning piece affected at all? Go ahead.
Yeah, so we are working towards that change. I'm expecting it to happen January 1st. When January 1st, that date, if assuming it does happen and there's no changes, the regional official plan would become our official plan. We would combine that with our official plan, and that's where we'd have the opportunity to have the policies in place for the taxation of the Mennonite old order churches. And then that official plan would go to the province for approval. So assuming that the province had no issues with it, then we'd be able to get that in place. And I did mention this previously, but because of the delay in the approval responsibilities, our official plan now has to go to the province. They require a 90-day review before we can go out to the public, and that's why our official plan is now delayed until mid-2025.
Thank you.
I understand the headaches dealing with the region, the delays and all that, and nothing we as staff or council can do about that. I do think in the absence of the region getting their act together, so to speak, we could take action as a township to help our church communities out and trying to be equitable and fair and provide good governance.
Can we waive taxes? On our portion.
Deanne wants to speak. I'll let her start.
Dan, Ms. Freeze?
So my understanding was it was based on how MPAC assessed the properties, and in order for them to be able to tax differently the churches and the schools, they'd have to be severed from the agricultural property. The province and the regional official plan and our official plan didn't allow these severances. So that's where we need the updated policy so that they can sever those properties and then they can be taxed separately for the farm versus the school or church.
And right now, are they being taxed as agricultural?
I think the issue, I'd have to get David to clarify if he remembers, but I thought the issue was that the farm was overtaxed because of the commercial use on the property, institutional use on the property.
My memory is, and Teresa can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure, again, the reason that the Mennonite community is so upset is because MPAC has no choice but to use a commercial assessment for the old order Mennonite churches. Is that correct, Teresa?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz. Yeah, exactly. So they can't look at the property because the churches don't own the land. If they were to be granted the severance, then yes, that piece of property would be in the church's name, and then they would become exempt. Because right now they're currently owned by the farmer. And with MPAC, all properties start out commercial and then they shift to whatever use. If it's farmland, it goes to farm taxes, residential. There's neither, they stay at commercial.
Councillor Schwab.
I think Mayor Schatz, you hit the nail on the head when you said we as council can waive taxes. And if we can't fix the problem one way, we should be looking at fixing it another way.
We can't waive regional or school board.
No.
But we can waive our portion.
Through you, Mayor Shantz. Yeah, you can write off taxes. Council has that obligation. You're just going to then, the rest of the township, if there would be a shift. So the rest of the township would pick up that portion.
Okay. Okay. AMO, anything else on that conference? Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, through you. I think this item was on the agenda just to make sure that staff are planning for the 2025 AMO Conference. It is on our radar. We set reminders in our calendars. I'm working on a schedule for council to which members of council would attend next year. That I hope to bring forward early in the new year.
So when do you have to do the booking? The thing is, once the bookings open, we need a staff for each person going so that they can get the rooms. They go really quick. It's like a lottery for Taylor Swift. Rayanne.
Through you, Mayor Shantz. It is cutthroat. We are literally down the hallway yelling at each other. Do you have this room? Usually it is the first Tuesday of January. Because of the way the holiday falls this year, we haven't received notice yet if it's going to be either the 7th or the 14th, but I have both of them blocked with no meetings being allowed to book in my calendar.
So if you want to go to AMO and you want to have a room that's close to the conference, let Rayanne know before the 7th of January. Okay. Is that all you need on that one? Okay. There's no notice of motion. We need a bylaw that the following bylaws in the hands of the clerk be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed, and that they be numbered as bylaw number 77-2024 to 86-2024, and that they be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with a corporate seal. Mr. Smith.
Sorry, Mayor
Moved
Sean.
by Jeff.
Not for the moving, no. I believe the bylaw to amend Woolwich Township Traffic and Parking Bylaw regarding rates of speeds will be as amended per your previous direction this evening.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Cadeau, seconded by Councillor Bryant. All those in favor? And that is carried. Motion to adjourn, to meet again in special session on January 14th, but we'll have budget before that for all of you who are interested, starting on the 7th. Moved by Councillor Cadeau, seconded by Councillor Schwint. All those in favor? And that is carried. On behalf of council, we appreciate all who participated, attended, or tuned in to the meeting tonight. But since council did not finish all the business in closed session before this meeting started, we need to pass a motion to reconvene in closed. Councillor Bryant, Councillor Burgess, all those in favor, and that is carried.